Hey there, Elliott here from Bow River Troutfitters, and today we're going to tie an intruder style fly for swinging to trout. As I do with all my articulated flies and intruder style flies, I start with Kevlar thread. So we've already looped our stinger hook onto the wire we're using for our trailer here, and I like to attach this to the underside of the shank. And what I'm going to do here is just ensure that I have enough room to change the hook out if I need to. I'm going to wrap that forward and then come back, wrap it all the way back, trim off the excess, come all the way back to the front and whip finish. Now I have my platform for tying an intruder style fly. Since we're tying a simple single station type intruder fly here, we're using a 15mm return eye shank, this case a Waddington. And now what we're going to do is we're going to right this in the vise so that we can begin to dress our fly. So I've switched out from Kevlar now to olive flat wax nylon, and I'm just going to wrap this back to the end of the hook, and I'm going to drop a dubbing loop here, and into that dubbing loop I'm going to add a blend of seal fur, hare's mask, and synthetic flash dubbing. You can use whatever blends you like, but I'm of the mind that the more shades of olive I have in a trout fly, the better it will fish. So I basically just tease a whole bunch of stuff together, and I like the seal fur because it's a longer, stiffer fiber, and it will act as a nice prop for the materials I'm going to add in front of it, help give this fly its overall profile when it's slicked down in the water and swimming. All right, so I like to make sure that I have a nice wide dubbing loop when I put the materials in there. I want this to spin up, and when I comb it out, I want it to have as much fiber protruding from the center of the dubbing loop as possible. Again, this adds to the prop for the materials that we're going to attach in front of it. You know, it's always easier to add more materials to your dubbing loop to begin with than it is to put materials into it after you've finished. So we're going to palmer this forward, making sure we hold all of those fibers back, and notice how this just goes on and creates this bump basically. It's just a bump of material. It will show in the fly when it's wet, but when we comb it out, it just helps it as a prop to give a bit of a teardrop profile to this fly when it's in the water, a little bit of a shoulder, if you will. So now in front of this, I'm going to take some olive crystal flash, and I'm going to take one whole strand, and then I'm going to cut it twice and lay it down so that the ends of the crystal flash basically extend through the gape of the hook, maybe even just past. But I want this to be as long as the rest of the materials I'm going to attach to the fly. I can always shorten it later if I have to. So I lay it down, and then I basically double it down and make sure it's wrapped tight. Next, we're going to take a marabou blood quill here. I like this browny olive, maybe a little bit more than I like just the plain dark olive, but that's just an individual preference. I'm going to really secure the tip here, and then I'm just going to trim that off. I don't want too much material in this fly. You know, a moderately dressed fly in this case will have, you know, very nice movement and be quite enticing for the fish when it's often in the winter when we're fishing these. It's very slow, a very deep presentation, and those materials, if there's not too much of it, will really antagonize the fish into striking because of the movement itself. And once we get this marabou blood quill palmered on here, we're going to go ahead and secure it, trim off the stock here, and now what we're going to do is add a couple of hackle feathers. I refer to these as ticklers, if you will, because they add a little bit of body, of course, but they do add movement and silhouette, which is nice. And you know, olive grizzly in this case, because it gives a bit of the sense of the lateral line of a fish, and now those parr marks that you'll see on the smaller fish that the predators will often target. So we're going to attach these feathers on either side of the fly, concave side inwards. This is just going to again give a kind of a delta wing to the fly and add to the silhouette. And you know, they do move quite nicely in the water as well. But really it's to add to the silhouette, and those parr marks on there are always a nice touch. So we'll just make sure that the feathers extend to the length we want, just past the end of the hook. Now we're going to make sure that we secure those. So a bit of a sharp transition here. I like to hot spot my flies when I can. In this case, we're going with a hot orange flat wax nylon, and I've tied in a pheasant rump feather here at the tip. Now I'm just going to, it'll be about 3 wraps of this feather just to give it a nice kind of mottled look and add to the depth of the fly. I really like the hot spot on my flies because I find it brings more strikes than it would without. Materials is really subjective. There's so many variations on this theme that you could do with whatever materials you have. Try this pattern for yourself and swing it on a tight line. Subscribe to our channel, check out our other videos, and thanks for joining us.